When somebody as powerful as Ringo Starr, formerly of the band The Beatles, thinks what's being done to you is really funny, it's going to have an effect on people who know you in Pittsburgh. At Mercy Hospital, for example, everybody laughed to hear that the people I turned to for help from torture were themselves the people torturing me. It's rare that anybody understand some of the things that seem to me to be simple to understand. I'll give you an example so you know what I'm saying and what I'm talking about. I was asked by Howard Diversion why I wanted a different psychologist than the one who had me arrested in Pittsburgh at the university. He was in deaf services. A friend of mine who was deaf had found him for me as an alternative to the situation I was dealing with. I said that it was a facility that employed two children of Holocaust survivors who used a nerve agent on me and had put me through a Manson ordeal that left me deaf. And he said he himself, being Jewish, didn't know whether it was true, certainly was unlikely to side with me in the whole concern I was raising, but he said, I don't like the sound of it enough that I'm going to transfer you. Now, when I suffered from passion towards my lover who rejected me, I was also very troubled by how much suffering I was undergoing. But the people who were laughing at me and pretending they didn't understand, attributing it to drugs, knew that the Wattenmakers in Pitt had used a poison nerve agent on me, and they knew that I didn't know it. So that's not what I'm talking about. Howard Diversion diagnosed it as a seizure that I suffered. It was helpful to understand that. You can see it now. I didn't know it was in there. I got it to force its way out by remembering being kidnapped and tortured on a snowy day in grade school. The police had impinged a persona about me. Were saying that I wanted status as a victim. So they began to excavate what they had impinged. They had lied about me and said, prove it's not true. And there's nothing you can do to prove a lie like that is not true when you don't even know that the source of the suffering is kidnapping and childhood on a snowy day because of a neuroplasm that had frozen shut. So they were just scribbling anything they wanted on that condition. And then saying, well, you can't prove it, or lying, saying libelous things about you isn't true. But that's not what I wanted to address as a message in a bottle sort of idea. Howard Diversion asked me, why did I go along with the Society for Human Ecology on Mount Desert Island? I said I was following the leader, Mr. Diversion. I had to try to get to the bottom of what was happening, and he didn't understand that. He saw it as sexual catering for a smorgasbord. I was just after the pussy. He didn't necessarily believe that's what I had done, but he basically said, you know, Pittsburgh, that's all they're going to say about you. Sergeant Cecilia asked me the same thing, and I said, I honestly kept telling myself this can't be real. I couldn't believe it was happening. It was so violent and crazy. They bashed the Exxon Valdez. My mother testifies to some of these things. They burned down the Jackson labs. Not all of that came out in the conversation with Sergeant Cecilia, but when I said I kept telling myself this can't be real, She said, I understand that perfectly. I've done undercover work myself. But there's one thing that I've never found anybody who understands. It seemed to me should be very easy to understand. Because there were people who proselytized when J. Edgar Hoover made secret tapes of Martin Luther King that the real sin was to have the FBI watching you in your privacy. Another person proselytized the same issue because Harry Truman refused to allow J. Edgar Hoover to do that. J. Edgar Hoover wanted to spy on the private life of one of Truman's employees, and Truman said, when a man punches the clock, his life is his own. Leave him alone. Don't do it. So the fact that they were setting up a Venus flytrap from a time predating appearance of the AIDS virus and were mobilized with this war operation in anticipation of what they had done seemed to me something that everybody should understand. I needed to find out what was going on and get evidence. One reason why people pretend they don't understand is like the nerve agent they knew about the poison and approved. For them, it was and remains a cool genocide. The black man got Mandela out of prison, the end of apartheid, and an Obama presidency in return for the life of Martin Luther King and the aspirations of the civil rights movement to public legacy of protection of the masses was put down for people having equal opportunity to get ahead, to become important people. Such people came right out and said, Duvall said, I know Bush started AIDS and I support him for it, for launching a tirade about the evil Chinese. He said they're evil. I was like, well, I don't support the AIDS attack. I don't. I thought there would be more people who didn't support it. The people pretending they didn't support it are what I understand least. I don't understand Abby Martin, Owen Jones, George Galloway. I don't. If somebody said when they heard that one child in Gaza was bombed and buried under rubble, that doesn't matter how many children, because one size fits all. The only story that matters is the first one, and the other ones don't matter anymore. That's what the attorney for Harris said about AIDS when it first started, was the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The script of Gail Burstyn is about the AIDS attack. It's a Texas school book. It's about the murder of Martin Luther King. It is the script that heavily incriminates John Lennon in the Disappearing Act. His partner, Paul McCartney, said they never will be found. And while maybe no one will ever be found, understand that a man's privacy is his own, and war games of entrapment are wrong. Maybe no one ever will. It seemed to me it should be easy to find people who felt that way. There were quite a few people who defended Martin Luther King against J. Edgar Hoover's secret tapes. J. Edgar Hoover was said to be untouchable. The pun on untouchability was in the script. These people were saying things to me like, if you wash, I will be offended. Cornel West talked about biological linkage. They had people revoltingly defecating on floors. They saw in their meditations on the subject the idea of poisoning me in the mouth as a tulip revolution in anticipation of COVID was consecrating of the spirits. This is Seattle's contribution to this nightmare. And the script was said to say nothing because it's worth money to the people who wrote it because of the claim that John Lennon was dead. So Paul McCartney threw in his hat with the people he claims killed John Lennon, demanding that the people who started AIDS be protected because the script said nothing. And Robert Fripp held his nose and dropped his pick and said Jimmy had a shudder of sorrow because he wasn't going to get laid by his virgin girlfriend. After 2 years of trying, she was still a virgin. He said that because he held his nose and dropped his pick, I was therefore a rapist. And the script bequeathed Midori Goto to the black man. And all of it was covered by the narrative of the script. It's all perfectly clear that this is the tale of the cool genocide. This is the flying carpet ride of the cool genocide. This is the revenge attack by Yoko Ono on a symbol of America's victory at sea. I was a little boy from Bush's ship in the Navy. And since we don't have a War Crimes Act, it made perfect sense to the people to forge my name on their bomb. The way Josh Shapiro clearly forges his name, Josh Shapiro drops bombs as representation of the dual citizenship lobby that Wattenmaker is from. Obviously, it's logically impossible to forge your own name unless you're under some kind of hypnosis. So Josh Shapiro is forging his name as an American when he really is representing Israeli slanderers. The way that I was used on Peter Gabriel's show as an invisible man is a very good example of the way that the slanders that are unleashed against Gaza can be seen in the lurid slandering mentality towards my attempts to get to the bottom of what was going on in Mount Desert Island. And my father wrote a book called Humanizing the School, so they were dehumanizing me. He had America's Stake in Human Rights as his oldest book from 1946 and 49. It's still in print. You can check the copyright date. So therefore, humans have the right to be slaves and die, is what they decided to example me by. Franklin Graham was friendly to Queen Elizabeth, whose Lord Secretary's daughter, Peter Gabriel, married. And he had a chaplain who went by Hitler until he changed his name to Lazarus because he was back from the dead. Well, Casper was the name of the man who attacked and tortured me. And Peter Gabriel came to his advocacy, as did Yoko Ono. Casper is like Lazarus, back from the dead, the friendly ghost of Hitler. Hitler is back from the dead, and they call him Casper. This is the pattern in the script and in the letters. They were put together with the help of Blythe Cinders, which means blaze from the cinders, Phoenix, and so on. And that they said nothing because Paul McCartney said Robert Fripp held his nose and dropped his pick and said, therefore, anyone who tells the truth about the AIDS attack is in violation of the law of secrecy surrounding the sacred Paul McCartney penny. And his forces in the Green Genocide Program slash or murdered Shannon Harps because her name was Sharps, because Harps is like Harp of Burma. It's a symbol of peace. And the penny signifier and its Star of David, the copyright in the Star of David, is a symbol of the AIDS genocide. And the script came from the Neva Manson Cinema Group. And George Galloway, Owen Jones, Abby Martin, they say nothing, see nothing, do nothing. Alderdice knows the Roger Waters worked with Miles Kirshner on slandering me. And their motto should be say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. Because they can't put together that they're supporting the AIDS attack in the name of one size fits all, meaning all the money goes to the people who did it. Paul McCartney said, John Lennon died and he's the mysterious Casper, the invisible oligarchy's spiritual godfather. And they commit mysterious murder and crimes like Valdez, USS Iowa. I mean, Donald Trump is a real national security problem. But if there was a War Crimes Act, John Kennedy wouldn't have had to be killed by the dual citizenship lobby in a payback for the Japanese group who wanted payback about Hiroshima. And they're not finished. They're torturing me to death. Yoko Ono has made no secret. They may keep quiet about what happened, but it's not a secret. Everybody remembers Amanda Harcourt inundating me with letters that she was the attorney for her and Yoko Ono back in 1984. Ross Cronenbitter remembers, Ming Na Wen remembers, Pam Horn remembers, Tara, no one still has the copies of the letters of Martha Gellhorn's. Patsy Williamson, the Honors Department director at CCAC, remembers. Rosine herself is evidently still in Oxford. They came and plunged the neuroplasm, to put me into seizures, to advocate for the cold genocide. That clocked, it turned out that the whole smorgasbord of sexual cating was two virgins pussy ball war game over Midori Goto. And this is what Seattle thinks is better than what I tried to do, which was to warn people as soon as it happened so that lives would be saved. They came when the Harcourt announced the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I still think that's a conspicuously shabby thing from people defending J. Edgar Hoover's secret taping of Martin Luther King to say about the AIDS attack. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you wash, will be offended. Biological linkage. And say we have a spiritual godfather who will lead you to the beyond. It's absurd theater. And they claim the letters say nothing, that the absurd theater means nothing, that David Bowie wanted to do it, that the things that David Bowie said that were fascist and cruel were not relevant, and so on. That's what the sandbaggers are. They live in sandbagger law. They're destined to sit on the beaches of the Gaza Riviera with Nosferatu when the day comes of forgiveness. George Galloway will no doubt drop the charges in the name of forgiveness.